So 2020 happened this year, and it was a very long and very depressing, and a year that I'm sure everyone wants to finish as quickly as possible. I feel everyone on that, so this video will not be incredibly long. Rather, to keep it short, I limited my selections for some of the best media I consumed this year to two of each. 2 albums alike, 2 books, and 2 movies. There's unfortunately not going to be any TV shows on here because I don't watch shows that much. I'm trying to change that for next year so that I can grow this extremely small channel a bit. I also limited to 2 because I like to cheat and I haven't consumed that much media at all this year. Like it's weird, this year was a blur, but also one where I remembered a lot of things. I might be the only one who felt like that, or not. This year was very weird to a lot of us, so I'm just going to start. And this video will not contain any spoilers for the media that has stories to tell. Obviously for music, there's really no spoilers to tell, so I'm going to leave that as an exception. Okay? Cool. Let's go. Okay, so 2 of the favorite books I read this year didn't actually come out this year. One came out in 2019 and the other in 2017. I did, however, read them this year, and since they are relatively new in comparison of what I usually read, I will count them for this list. The 2 best books that I've read this year, and the ones that I taught most about, have to be Girl, Woman, Other by Bernardine Evaristo and The Moral Thieves by Sherry DeMolin. They're both honestly amazing, and I can talk about them forever, but I'm going to contain myself here. Girl, Woman, Other is a book published in May of 2019 that was written by Bernardine Evaristo. It's basically a book that's about the lives of 12 characters that are followed over the course of decades in the United Kingdom. Most of the characters are black women, some who are queer, and some who are straight. There's also a non-binary character in the novel, and I thought I should mention that because I haven't read any books that place me in the shoes of a non-binary character. And in my opinion, this book did an exemplary job because it made me truly understand and feel what they felt as they went on with their lives. Evaristo outlining their struggle with their gender in a heartbreaking but also powerful way. And Evaristo's empathetic writing is present with the other characters as well. Like I mentioned, most of the characters are black women in this novel, so this book does touch on race issues in the UK, an issue I have to admit I was ignorant of because I'm from the US. Nevertheless, however, I think the novel did a fantastic job at highlighting those issues in an understandable way, especially because it flew over the course of decades, so I was able to see the evolution of that struggle as the years went on. That's the same for LGBT issues, class issues, and issues that dealt with the patriarchy. I mean, the novel starts from the point of view of a black lesbian who we see go from an obscure theater director to a more renowned one later in life. We follow along her journey, and through that story we see, for instance, how the gentrification of London has affected her and affected people who are like her. We also get to see how her initial economic situation and her rebellious roots paired with her sexuality shaped her experiences as a woman, and how that manifested through her plays. Every story of the main characters is like that. The novel follows a theme of intersectionality and shows how race, family background, economic standing, immigrant standing, and many other aspects shapes women's and other people's experiences. And one additional thing that I especially like is how each of the characters are connected to one another in some sort of way, and the writing, in my opinion, shows that connection. The novel has little punctuation, so it's written in a stream of consciousness way that does a great job conveying the connection of the characters. It reads more like memories of the characters, and because of that, it did a great job at making the reader empathize with each and every one of them. Honestly, this is a great book and everyone should check it out. The Moral Thieves is a book that was published in 2017 that was written by Sherry DeMolin. It's a YA novel that falls into the climate fiction genre, so there's a chance that I might do a full video going in depth on it, if I don't spoil all of my talking points here. The main premise of this novel is that it's set in a dystopian future that has been badly affected by climate change. And because of the events leading up to the point in this novel, anyone who is an indigenous loses the ability to dream. To regain that ability, non-indigenous people start rounding up indigenous people so that they can collect the marrow of their bones so that they can dream again. Yeah, It's an extremely messed up and grotesque premise that honestly gets its message across in an incredibly impactful way. What I particularly liked about The Moral Thieves, and this is something that I mentioned in one of my essays about climate fiction, link in the description, is that the constant and unfair longing by environmentalists for indigenous people and their practices to be at the forefront of the change to a more sustainable future gets played to its extreme. Simply, indigenous people are forced to share a part of them to the people in power, even if those people don't understand the significance of what they are taking. It's an act of violence, an act that represents real settler violence that has occurred, and which is still occurring to this day. And thus, this book shows how the drive to obtain indigenous knowledge, no matter how well intentioned, can serve to perpetuate the same violence that indigenous people have faced all too often. Honestly, everyone should read this book before the sequel comes out in 2021. It's a book that has greatly impacted me this year, and which taught me a lot also. I'm sure it will teach you all a lot also. And honestly, if you're a middle school history or English teacher that wants to have an open and honest discussion about the violence perpetuated against indigenous people, then this book will be a great tool to start that conversation among your students. It's truly a great book that can spearhead any discussion on the intersection between climate action and indigenous rights. The first album from this year that I found really memorable was the album Bad Vacation by Lisa Ann. This was her latest album after her absolute masterpiece, Fine But Dying, that I played almost non-stop in 2019. And this being the second album that I listened to from her, I can confidently say that she really met my expectations. Like, I'm not a music critic, so I can't fully describe why I like this so much. But one thing that stands out is the relatability of her lyrics. Her songs tackle issues that deal with mental health and self-destructive habits that I've known to have. So to have an outlet where I can blast songs about them is cathartic to say the least. Two of the more standout songs that I keep going back to are I Shouldn't Ghost My Therapist and Terrible Discovery. The first song, I relate to how I constantly overthink and how the speed of the world makes me desire long and quiet days or nights where I can be myself. But those longings are just that, longings, and my obligations prevents me from truly spending the time that I need to be with myself on a constant basis. Thus, whenever I go many days feeling like that, in which I can't be myself, I put on this song and dance every time. Especially when Lisa Ann sings, How Do You Slow Down? Knowing that the second song is almost the complete opposite to the one I just described. Terrible Discovery is basically about realizing that the worst person for yourself is precisely yourself. Yeah, without saying too much, it's safe to say that I intensely relate to this song also, and almost to a painful level. Like, the chorus and bridge of this song basically describes how a person's self-destructive habits are a public spectacle, which, let me say, is too real for me. So, this song, in fact this whole album, is a cathartic experience for me, and I think everyone should check it out. The second album that I absolutely love from this year is the album Anime, Trauma, and Divorce by Open Mike Eagle. I'm not going to lie, but this is the first full-length project that I checked out from him, even after hearing about him for many years, and I absolutely hate myself for it. The first thing that I loved about this album was the production, which was a mix of jazz and soul and atmospheric beats that had a hint of trap drums at times. Obviously, the lyrics were absolutely amazing, and that's not surprising from a rapper like Open Mike Eagle. This album was also very relatable, with the songs ranging on topics that dealt with trauma, mental health, financial issues for artists, and to divorce. The two songs that I love from this album are the songs The Edge of New Clothes and Bukiarity. The first song I truly love because the lyrics initially seem nonsensical to me, but when I listen more to it, I realize it's just Mike just yelling and letting everything out about how he's losing his mind about everything. I think that's what he's doing because the chorus shows how he's at the edge of his world, on an edge of a cliff. And he's almost nonchalant about that. Like, he's seeing all this bad stuff happen, and he doesn't care. Like he said, he doesn't care what happens anymore. For a year like this, I can just say, honestly, same. The second song I love was the song called Bukiarity. After looking it up, I found out that the title referred to a character that can place zippers on any object, which allows the zipper line in the chorus to make much more sense. From what I can gauge, this song seems to be about being stuck after every progress that a person can make. And it seems that Mike is focused more on the instances where he's stuck more so than on his successes. The lyrics also seem to show how feelings of inadequacy and failure can linger on even after negative events pass, even after one succeeds, and that's something I can relate to a lot. Dang, my music choices really showed how this year treated me. Anyways, check out this album, and let's move on to the movies. My two favorite movies that I watched this year, and they didn't really come out this year, but came out in late 2019, so I'm counting it for this year, are Portrait of a Lady on Fire and I Lost My Body. Portrait doesn't really need any reason as to why it's so good because I'm sure a good amount of people have watched it. Nevertheless, however, the biggest reason why I loved it was because it showed the romance between Marianne and Heloise in such a complete and tragic way that it truly made me feel for the both of them. Like, their love was so pure and intense that the inevitable ending made me shed tears for the entire night that I watched it on. Also, the sparse music completed this movie so much and enhanced its emotions greatly to the point where now whenever I hear that one Vivaldi piece, I immediately think of this film. Plus, the cinematography is absolutely beautiful, definitely making this movie one that everyone should watch. I Lost My Body, in a strict sense, is a movie about a severed hand attempting to find its host's body. Alongside that, there's also another plot that deals with our main character Naufel, attempting to woo a girl that he became infatuated with after he heard her voice from a pizza delivery. The first plot about the hand can undoubtedly seem a bit weird to people after hearing about it, but I have to say that the hand is its own character that you feel and root for as it goes on its own journey. For the second plot, I honestly was apprehensive about it because it blatantly used the stalking for love trope. But the absolute thing that I liked about this movie was that Naufel faced real consequences for those actions, and it was nice to see that. Along with the overall story, the animation was incredibly beautiful. Like, the city of Paris was incredibly vibrant, and just about every scene could honestly have been a poster if you stopped it and blew it up. Definitely watch this movie if you're into animated films, and if you want to break from the more childlike animated films at that. So, that was some of the best media that I experienced throughout the course of this year. I wanted to do some sort of retrospective on this year, and this was the best way I thought of doing it. Thank you everyone for listening and watching. If you want to see me break down more stuff in the future, especially any media with environmental themes, please consider subscribing. Also, if you can check out my last two videos, I will greatly appreciate that. Here's to putting 2020 behind us, and to me creating even more content for the future. You are all the best, honestly. See ya. I wish these words were easy to flow out of my tongue. I look at your days that are done. You coming out and chasing some dreams. They're just lingering within your reach. It's flying over past your head. Attempted to catch some pieces of them. Falling from the sky. From these conferences that you keep attending every single day and night. They come up with these classes you attending with no moment to breathe. Because when you are done, you are constantly